Let me just get this out of the way. There's no reason to read The Economist or Scientific American if you're taking the LSAT in less than a year. There are approximately 400 actual official reading comp passages, and most people aren't even going to get to half of those. So stick with the real thing. Now, you're going to have about 7 questions associated with each reading comp passage. Some are going to be general in nature, some will be specific, and some will require a bit more reading between the lines. I always recommend when you're doing the questions associated with a passage, start with the general global questions first, because those are your gimmies. You have your main idea questions, primary purpose, passage organization, best title, tone, author's opinion, everything general in nature. So after you read the passage, you should be able to solve these questions, because that's the big picture stuff. That's like if you were to watch a movie, you might not remember all the details or subplots, but you should at least be able to say, what genre was the movie? Was it action? Was it adventure? Was it comedy? Was it romance? You should get the big picture theme of the movie. If you didn't, you might have fallen asleep and missed the whole thing, right? So same deal with reading comp. Focus on the big picture, the main idea. You should at least be able to get that. The questions involving the details with specific line references, you can always go back to the passage and find the relevant information when you need to help you solve those questions. But during your initial read of the passage, just focus on the general, global, big idea, the author's opinion. Save the details for later. Now, I do recommend that you approach the questions within a passage out of order in order to build your understanding as you go. So you knock out these general global questions first, then you solve the more detail-oriented specific questions that refer you back to the passage, and finally, you solve the more inferential questions that require a bit more reading between the lines. Now, these inferential questions are ones that ask you things like, which one of the following would the author be most likely to agree with? These are going to be a little bit harder because they don't give you a clear jumping off point. They're not necessarily referring you back to a specific part of the passage. So you may need to do a little bit of hunting around, which is why I do say save these for last, because every single question on the LSAT is worth the same. So I always recommend you lock up those easy points first with the general global questions in reading comp, then the questions where they're at least giving you a section of the passage to go to. And then finally, the ones where they give you nothing, save those ones for last, because again, everything's worth the same. Go from easy to hard to build your understanding, and make sure that you're not running out of time on the hard questions and never getting to the easy ones as a result. Now, if you struggle with the time constraint, the advice I've given you regarding order of approach will help, but it may not be enough. You may just find that you are getting bogged down on your initial read of the passage. Focusing on the main idea will help, but even so, I know that a lot of students still struggle with timing, and so I do have a few tools to recommend if you want to develop your quote-unquote speed reading abilities, to develop the ability to read faster when reading difficult, dense text on a screen. There are 2 free apps I like for this. One is called Spreeder, S-P-R-E-E-D-E-R. The other is called Phrase Reader, P-H-R-A-S-E Reader. These tools let you copy paste in any text you want and then display it to yourself at different speeds, kind of like you're putting yourself on a reading treadmill. And if you use this tool over the course of 6 months or so, you will definitely see improvements. You could even get benefits from doing it over the span of 3 months to develop your ability to read faster and faster on the screen. But if you find that you're really struggling with reading comp on a screen, you may want to seek the accommodations to do the LSAT on paper instead of on the computer and just avoid the issue entirely. So definitely seek out those accommodations in advance, because it takes LSAC a while to get back to you, and there are deadlines for this. But the earlier you start the process, the earlier you will hear it back. But again, those 2 apps, Spreeder and Phrase Reader, to develop your skill at reading difficult, dense text on a screen. Now, finally, I know that a lot of folks struggle with dual comparative reading comp passages. You may want to do these either first or last around the 3 longer passages, because of course on LSAT reading comp, you have 3 long passages and then 1 set of 2 dual comparative passages on a related topic, and the flow can be a little bit different for the dual passages versus the long ones. Now, before I go, I want to share with you one quick strategy for these dual passages, which is that before reading the dual passages, you might want to skim the question to see if there's a question referring to only one of the 2 passages. If so, you can read just that single passage and knock out the specific question without cluttering your mind with all the information contained in the other of the dual passages. This is the exception to the rule. I typically recommend that you don't read the questions before solving the passage. That applies to these three long passages, but I make an exception for these dual passages because they are different in nature. Now, of course, I have many more strategies for LSAT reading comp, as well as the other sections of the LSAT. And if you'd like to find out more, you can check out the links below the video to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. We have a lot of ways we can help you score in the 170s, whether it's through our live online classes via Zoom, our on-demand video courses, small group coaching, and one-on-one coaching. And if you found the video helpful, please do me a favor and share it with someone who needs to see it. I don't do any advertising for these videos. I rely only on word of mouth to help get the word out, and your sharing the video really does make a difference. And in the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.